Welcome to Chris's Storytelling Corner. This is Christopher Moldong of Chris's Storytelling Corner. Today I'm going to do a movie review for the documentary Mully. This movie is not something that I generally review. I tend to do more like action movies, the superhero movies, or just more, I guess, like nerd related movies, I guess, or like foreign films or something like that. Um, this one is more of just a documentary. It's really good though. After watching it, I feel more certain that it's good for me to do a movie review for this, as it's just such a good movie, and I really want to get the word out that this movie exists and to watch it. Anyways, next time I'll have a manga review for Skip Beat Volumes 1 and 2 and a list of the top magic users in anime and manga. You can check out my author's website at www.chrismodon.com. You can buy my first novel, a fantasy adventure called The Mustard Prince in the Condiment Kingdom, for $4.99. Also, for $2.99, you can buy my short story collection, a collection of 10 short stories in the horror, fantasy, and realistic fiction genres. Check out my Twitter page and author's Facebook page. Links to all these will be provided on the description. I'd also really like to hear from you guys, so leave any comments that you can. If you have any like movie recommendations for me or want me to review any movies, just leave that in the comments as well. Make sure to subscribe and share this channel as well. I'm just going to recap the movie or documentary slash movie and give my thoughts on the overall movie, the characters and whatnot. So the style that this movie was made was its documentary with Mully himself talking, and then you actually see like a movie kind of playing, and then you also get some interviews from like his children, his wife, his immediate family, and some like kids that he's rescued and whatnot. Let's get to the recap of Mully. So Charles Mully was born in 1949 in Thayama village in Kangundo. If I'm getting his names wrong, I am sorry. I know I'm getting it. I know I'm totally butchering these names. In Machakos, Kenya. He was abandoned by his family at age of 6, and his uncle rejected him. He saw his father beat his mother, and he was just abandoned in the village. So he spent his adolescence just begging on the streets. He couldn't go to secondary school because he could not afford it. So, pretty much uneducated as well. So at age 17, um, he walks into his church, and just it changes his life. He accepts Jesus and God into his life, or yeah, he accepts like God into his life, and just experiences salvation. Um, he then walks 70 kilometers. There's like this 3 day journey of walking to Nairobi in search of employment, and then he keeps knocking on doors, and he finds this private home uh, by this Indian woman, and she takes him in, and she like bathes him, gives him food, and gets him work where he's like tilling the garden, washing clothes, cooking, and just doing all this like domestic stuff. But a year later, Mully is promoted, or later on, he's actually promoted to a farm manager, and he meets his future wife Esther. They actually marry in 1970 and have 8 biological children. So he's farm manager, and then he's saving up money, and then he eventually buys a vehicle, finding out that there's a need for taxi services. So he's doing this, he begins this operating a public transport service between Eldoret and Nayaru. Um, from there, like he's also, he knows about agriculture. He has agricultural business ventures. Um, from the taxi service, it expands until he's not driving the taxi no more. He has other people driving the taxis now. There's music in these taxis and whatnot. Then he gets into tires. He gets in real estate, and there's all the gas and energy and all these other ventures, right? Mully finds Mully Ways Agency in the 1970s, which is a transportation business conglomerate, and he becomes very wealthy with assets valued in millions of shillings. In '89, Mully sold all his property and businesses and dedicated the proceeds to helping street children through rescue, shelter, medical care, and education. What happened was he drove his car. Well, actually, what happened is he went to work, but a bunch of street kids wanted money to protect his car. When he didn't give it to them, they took his car. And he took the bus home. He was just really disturbed. And then he drove one of his cars and just kept driving until he stopped. And he just sits in his car for 4 hours before he, just asking God, just kind of talking to God. And then he just kind of gives himself up to God. He goes home, tells him that he's going to sell all his businesses and whatnot. His family's just totally against it. And then suddenly Mully starts bringing them children into this home. And just more and more children. His wife doesn't necessarily like it, but she did end up cooking, bathing, washing their clothes, and whatnot, and started to become a part of this enterprise. Unfortunately, it kind of split the family apart, and he had to send some of his kids to boarding school because he kind of had this new family. And he kept bringing all these kids more and more, teaching them how to work, though. They built like a school, they built like homes and whatnot and property until it got so big, and it grew so big until they needed to move. And they moved to this one place, and it's just desert. It's absolute desert. But they started building, and these really like shanty town, like it's not this like great, like really not so great homes, these shacks and whatnot. I mean, it's just not so great. Some of the kids started to leave and go back to the streets. He found some of them and took them back, but it wasn't great. But they started building and things got better. One problem that they had, though, is that they needed water. There was a drought. They built a bridge, hoping they'd have water underneath it, that the drought would end and whatnot. And so they need water. And Mully and his wife prays to God. Well, actually, they needed food first. I forgot about this part. They needed food, and they ran out of food, and they prayed to God. And a woman comes in with a truck full of food. Seriously, that just happened. So now they need water. And Mully and his wife prayed, and they walk one night, and Mully just finds a spot, and that's where, and God's telling them that pretty much, this is where water is, and they need to dig. And they keep digging this big hole. And this is the desert. I mean, no wells in this area. And somehow they find a rock. And then they don't know what to do. Ask Mully what to do. And it's his son's actually digging, right? And eventually they hit the rock and water comes out of it. From this water, they make an irrigation system. They make a greenhouse. They plant. They start farming. They make a forest. And they become self-sufficient. I mean, they make their own food until they had surplus. And they even sold the food. And then they grew trees, and the place went from a desert to green. And because it has its own climate, they actually had more rain. So I mean, it's just a self-sufficient compound. I say compound. I mean, this is like acres and acres and acres of green, and there's more kids that come in. Mullys, they then make Mullys Children's Family (MCF) for all these kids, and they start educating them, getting them to work, and to the point where they're doing like agriculture, sewing, martial arts, to the point where their taekwondo team, I believe it's taekwondo team, is representing Kenya in the Olympics. And then some of the children start going to college and they start becoming people of the world, like important people, you know. Um, and then Mully's children get into it. They were against it at first as 8 children, but then a lot of them start working for MCF, becoming leaders of MCF, managers and whatnot, marrying within people they found within MCF. So currently, Mully's Children's Family, or MCF, has just under, well, actually, since 1989, they've taken over more than 20,000 abandoned children. Um, so that's pretty much it for the recap. My thoughts on the movie. A plus, A plus. Watch this movie. Like that's it. If you're a spiritual person, watch this movie. If you're not a spiritual person, watch this movie. It's really good. I cannot speak enough about it. Mully, everyone calls him Daddy. One thing you'll notice about Mully when he talks, when you see him, he's always smiling. This guy's just a happy man, and it's earned too. You know, it's not a fake smile. This guy was begging on the streets. You know, he was not happy with his life at one point of his life, and early on in his life. Um, but he's always smiling. He earned it. Just such a philanthropist, thinking of others, real spiritual, just has so much faith. I mean, digging that hole was just an act of faith. Like everything he does is an act of faith. And he got richer. He gave up his riches. You know, in a sense, it's got. There's very much a biblical thing going on. You know, if you think about it, like he gave up his riches, kind of like Job. Like he was already a rich guy. You know, lost a lot and became richer by the end of it. You know, by having faith in God, staying the course, and became richer because of it. Um, it's a great man. Uh, full of love. I cannot speak how just inspirational this man is. His upbringing was hard. You know, beggar on the street, no education, determined though. You know, found God, found determination. You know, something in life to turn things around. And man, gosh, you watch something like this, and you're just like, man, I can do more with my life. You know what I mean? It's like this guy from Africa, you know, in Kenya, from nothing, and it's not a rich country whatsoever. Um, just became this rich man, you know, and now became a richer man, a more giving man. You know, so it's great. Everything. There's no entitlement, you know. Everything is just earned, you know. Uh, and his life was harder than anyone, like most anyone, is ever going to face. You know, you can be poor in America and beg on the street, and still live like over here because people are rich, you know. for the most part. You know, you hear the stories of like these people that are making more begging than having an actual like 9 to 5. You know, over there it's just not. I imagine it's not the case. Um, so he had it so hard, and man, did he just make the most of it? You know, to say the least. His wife was with him through it all. You know, she didn't really like it at first. What Mully was doing, giving up everything, and you know, it you know, she was with him though, and it just came back and everything's good. You know, everything's good. You know, same with the children. They was like us against them. You know, the biological children against like these children that Mully, you know, their father was bringing in, and it's just like, and then they got a part of it, and now they're leaders of MCF. You know, and it's just amazing. MCF is amazing. How do you just the guy Mully just gets people to get these orphans from the street, takes them in very bad places of the world. Like these are places you probably don't want to be. You know, slums and whatnot, where you make the wrong move, you can get killed. He's going in these places, getting these kids out of there, and trying to make them into better, just better people. It's amazing what he's doing with MCF, and just what the compound that he has, the acres that he has, he turned the whole desert green. And I went into the spirituality of it, the biblical nature of it. I mean, find there's a rock, like there's a rock on the ground. They strike the rock. If you know Moses, like he wasn't actually Moses wasn't supposed to strike the rock to find water. He's actually supposed to ask the rock for water. But it's crazy to think that like here's a rock, you strike the rock, water comes from the rock. I mean, it's straight out of the Bible. It is straight out of the Bible, and it's insane. He prays to God, and food comes. I mean, you'd think he's lying, I'm a spiritual guy myself, though, so it's like I believe, it's like I believe it's from God. I mean, I really do. Um, one thing, one thing that people don't realize too is like he's really charitable too. Like there was this election apparently that happened in Kenya, and it just tore the country apart. Tribes went up against each other, and he went and just gave away what he could to, no, there's no tribes. It's just Kenya. And one thing is that notice with a lot of people, there's greedy people out there, but for people that have like, and I'm generalizing here, okay, I'm not saying everyone's like this, but in general, if you've made wealth through your own hard work, I've noticed that you tend to become more charitable. In a sense, if it's just something you didn't earn, you don't become that charitable. But stuff that you do earn and you amass wealth, I notice an amount of charity, and that is definitely applies to Mully as well. He's taking in kids. I think he's still doing it today. Yeah, he's still doing it today. So just an amazing movie. It's funny. I went with a friend. We did not expect the movie theater to be full. Today's the last day to watch the movie, and we actually didn't expect the movie theater to be full, and or to even have many people in it. I was listening to some talk radio, and they mentioned this movie. That's how I found out about this movie. And, I was just, okay, I gotta watch it. I'm so glad that I did. And, it was just good watching it with other people. I was told by it, I was told that you're gonna cry, When they found the water, I got teary-eyed. And after that, like, there's a point in the movie where you're just gonna get teary-eyed somewhere. My point, I got teary-eyed when they found water. I'm a spiritual guy. Um, they found water, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, like that is just that's God, that's biblical right there, and yeah. So when this movie comes out for rent or wherever, I greatly recommend to watch this movie. Like I said, if you're spiritual, watch this movie. If you're not really spiritual, still watch this movie. It's a good movie. It goes by so quickly. It's a documentary, but it's also a movie as well. Um, some of the footage and some of the stuff you'll see is downright horrific. I mean, there's a part where they show the election and the chaos that's happening, and this guy just kicks this kid in the head. You see this other kid just getting beaten down, and you hear stories from some of these people that are just so sad, so tragic. Now, living here in America, it's like, oh my gosh, like you don't realize how good you have it, you know, until you see other places, and uh, it's so much worse. I mean, I've been to the Philippines. You know, it's a lot worse there. They don't have a lot there. Kenya didn't look like they had even less than what the Philippines had. Um, but yeah, and it's amazing that someone like Mully though is there to help bring, like really almost make something out of nothing. That's the thing, showing unity, spirituality, values, belief in God, family, and just everything that just like everything that's like good in the world. I suppose is kind of like encapsulated in this movie. So that's all for today. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment to this channel. Thank you for listening to this movie review. Next time, I will have a list of the top magic users in anime and manga, and have a manga review for Skip Beat Volumes 1 and 2. Thank you, and until next time.